Asampaetia. Obayansa fuso obunuye wankana asam. Tema futu sam kakre wa supeme. Yo kofi omani ya woman. Omani ya memana. Geni baby ako. Wachata jaya wareni. Wonsom wanini pa. Asa dipa wofioye. Yamo yemberaye. So wanini pa so ya wanabe yamo yemberaye ebe ya ifihena so wanini pa nasa depa ofioyo yamo yemberaye ebe ya ifihena amabe ya ifihena amabe yo asite be Shira, Mamani Paya, the Foa, and Yanum, and Fanya Mistroya, Jumana, Yami Besrayan, O'Brien, Boya, and Moyamurae, Abeya, Efianara, Amabaya, Efianara, Ejanova Pofo, Asitra,
Good evening and welcome to Town Hall Talk. We resume after our break for Christmas, for elections and for renewal as a country. Tonight I have a guest who needs very little introduction. A stalwart of the NPP, one of the fighters for return to democratic rule. Mr. Awuku Okudzeto is also a statesman of our country. As I indicated, it's difficult to introduce him fully, and therefore I'll take liberty in making it short because he has a big resume. Mr. Okudzeto, welcome to Town Hall Talk.
Thank you.
How have you been?
By His mighty grace, I'm well.
Great. How happy have you been with the conduct of the elections and the outcome?
Maybe not as happy as I had anticipated, although I had my fears, particularly in relation to the parliamentary. In relation to the presidency, actually I had expected much more gap in the vote for the winner. But what has happened was comfortable. But I was very much disappointed with the parliamentary. I was not expecting that we're going to have a hung parliament and more or less as if the presidency and the party were not winning in parliament. And that was very disappointing. But of course, I also believe that sometimes we are also learning lessons in the democratic process because I think it's normally been taken for granted that the president has huge majority in parliament, therefore he can pursue his agendas as he wishes. My worry has always been that I didn't see compromises from both parties over the years.
So we'll look at that. But as we go forward, so these are the lowlights or the dampened expectations of Mr. Okudzeto, the politician. What are your highlights or your happiness, so to speak, of Mr. Okudzeto as the statement?
Well, my happiness is the fact that Nana Rodanko Akufo-Addo has won a second term. I think that is my happiness. In fact, I had told him.
But that is still a political happiness. That is you as a politician.
No, that is me as well. No,
as
me
a
as
politician.
As a politician, yes.
Right.
Because if, as a politician, you look at the political scene and you see a party in power or a president in power who has produced visionary concepts and ideas, and your prayer is that he should win, but we also appreciate, of course, that 4 years is always just passes like that. And so if you can have a second term to relook, to refocus, to review, it's always useful. And that is why, in that context, I am happy.
You spoke, or you were about to speak of compromises, so let me just take you there. So the nature of Parliament, the dynamics that's playing out in Parliament, what are your general observations and what worries you?
Well, I have been worried actually about Parliament for quite a period now, having been there before and appreciating that much work was done in committees, and therefore the floor of the House sometimes is like a show place for people their views. But I see so much rancor over the years, which compels me often to ask both sides as to whether they appreciate that there is something that I call national interest. That in all things they must always look at the national interest. But if they are looking at the question of national interest, then the question would be that, okay, I disagree with you on this and that point, but on this and this point, I agree with you. But look at it from my point of view also. Let's take that into consideration. Let's discuss that and see whether we cannot come to some sort of understanding. This is what I see lacking over the years.
Was your parliament better at this than the current parliament or the previous, just retired parliament?
Well, we had a big gap of 33 to 105. And so you can see that the opposition was minimal. But I think if you go back to the Hansa, you will see that that minimality was not expressed in what happens, because people appreciated, or at least the members appreciated why they were there. They appreciated the magnitude of the issues. They do their homework. They come, if they are critiquing, the opposition is critiquing the government, they are bringing cogent arguments, they are bringing suggestions and ideas, and oftentimes you find out that those ideas are taken into consideration in coming to a conclusion. That's why I'm saying that we use the committee system as an effective tool to discuss issues and also to come to agreement.
Right. The committee system is also used as a defense, in
Yes,
fact, by recent parliament.
Yes.
When the public criticizes them for not being overly rigorous against government business, the response of defense has always been that, look, we do a lot more work in committees, and therefore, like you said, the chamber is just a showpiece, and it's not really. But let me ask you, with all respect to Parliament, not in any disrespectful way, do you think that there has been a depreciation in the human quality of members of Parliament over the years?
Well, that is actually the point that I'm trying to raise, is to say that if you look at the caliber of the people who were, okay, let me forget about the Nkrumah period, because in that context, it was a one-party state. Educational level in the country at that time was actually not of any higher than that. Indeed, the number of people who were university graduates at that time, you can count them on your fingertips. So many of them had not even been to university. Many had not even been to secondary school. But they did manage their work. That's completely different from the Busia era, when you can see that Parliament was full of, you might call them intellectuals, because you see from both sides of the house, you find numerous PhDs. You find many who may not have a PhD, but they have a qualification which are almost equivalent to a PhD. And so you can see that reflected in the debates also, that in debates, issues are taken, they are analyzed, and then they are portrayed. And so even where you may see that there may be so-called disagreements, some of them are quite minimal. But over the years, I've seen that Parliament has not been taken as a place for making money, if you like to put it that way. And so many go there, and you don't know the basis for their being there. I think there were even this discourse at certain period that there are some people that won't never even open their mouth. And so you don't know what they are there for. Many of them will miss the parliamentary sessions because they will come as and when they feel like it. And yet this is the period where they are being well paid. Because at our time, the allowance that was given to us, I tell someone that it was not even enough to put fuel into my car as an MP. And so things have changed now.
Are the parties failing? You were a party stalwart. Are the parties failing to influence the process? And whether you call it democracy or not, but are the parties, don't you think the parties have a responsibility to also influence the quality outcomes of the process?
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. That is where the failing is coming from. Because I think the party organization, party structure is creating the problem. I was asking someone the other day, for example, about membership, party membership, that those are not being enforced as to who is a party member, who is not a party member. Because there should be a membership card. There should be some membership contribution to support the party in its work. Then the person is a shareholder in a corporation. And a shareholder in a corporation, when there's an AGM, you find out no matter what it is. I have had experience in corporate meetings where people travel all the way from Accra to Kumasi for an AGM. And at the end of the meeting, they're just given some small snack or something like that. Then you ask yourself, this man traveled all the way from Accra to Kumasi because they felt that they have some important stake. And that is the reason why they come. And this is what we don't see in the party structure. And because we are not doing this, people are using money to buy votes. That means a man purports to support you. And then someone come and give him money, and he goes to vote because he gives him money.
Critics of those who would argue against the party taking a much more influential and instrumental role will argue that the Formina example of the NPP is a fantastic case study of how parties fail if they try intervening in the process. And therefore, parties should allow the process to play out. Whoever wins, wins. Parties should not try and negotiate and broker peace and deals in order to field someone. Playing the devil's advocate, that's what critics of the parties taking an instrumental role.
No, that is a valid point, because my view is that parties should not impose a candidate, because when you are talking about party, whom are you talking about? Who is the party? That's the issue that I'm raising. It will say that when there's a membership card that identifies me as a party member, it means that when you come to so-called primary, which now unfortunately has turned out to be a money game, which is not the way I understand it to be, I would have said that it's a free period for me as a party member to go and express my view as to who of the people who are standing that I should vote for. But now it turns out that the party leadership is imposing candidates without appreciating the feeling of the hierarchy of members. That's what I'm talking about now, about this party card and membership. That the membership will ensure that the person who is taking a decision as to A or B should be a candidate for the election, should be a party card holder, and therefore a shareholder in taking that decision. It's like choosing the board of directors of a corporation. They may put so many names for you to vote, but at the AGM, it's you who decides whether you should vote for this person or that person, not the imposition. The imposition, I think, is the drawback that was reflected in this current election that we had. It is quite clear. Because if this large number of MPs can lose their seats, it means that they were not supported by the electorate. And that is very serious.
So on hindsight, would you say the NPP could have better handled the way the Formina situation was handled?
I think
With the benefit of hindsight, now we know the outcome, we all know what has happened.
Yes.
Would you say that something better could have been done? And what do you think could have been done?
I think they did an error because that controversy that arose, they did it. I remember it happened in Bekwai before. And, well, the same situation arose because the person who was pushed aside was the one who won that election. Now, in this case, we've done the same thing again. And so I think it is good to take stock and find out what have we done wrong. Now I hear people say that the party hierarchy is to some committee to do something. And I said, they are going about it the wrong way. This is the time they need an audit. And to do an audit, this should not be an internal audit. You need to get some people from outside to come and review the whole situation, question everyone involved, particularly the leadership, and then find out where the errors have occurred, and then prescribe what you might call remedial. Because if we don't do it, there'll be whitewashing. Because if the leadership are the same people who are going to appoint people to look at the matter like that, they are going to appoint people whom they think are going to say. In fact, sometimes the people you are appointed to go and do the investigation may be the very one who are guilty in creating the problem in the first place. And that, I think, is a wrong approach.
You have indicated a few lamentations you have by reason of the recent outcomes of the elections. I think that one of your biggest lamentations would be the fact that the NPP lost their speakership position to the NDC.
Absolutely.
What are your reflections on that? How did this happen, you think?
Well, it happened exactly before. It's the same thing, because if you say you have equal number of members in parliament, and then you have an independent member who had openly said that he was going to support you, then how do you get yourself into this kind of situation that you created? It means something seriously has gone wrong in the party itself, in its own disciplinary process, in the discourse of allowing people to express their own views clearly. I think it's a shame. It's a big shame. Not that I had anything against Gbagbe. I think if one is to be honest, he is among the other groups the most able individual to hold that position.
So from the standpoint of a statesman,
from the standpoint of
it's something you find gratifying?
He is a longest serving member of parliament. He's a lawyer who thinks clearly. I've had interactions with him, even with the members, and saw that many are rabble-rousers, but he tries to avoid that kind of situation. And that, to me, is the one that and near to his benefit in holding the position that he has held. But then, as I said, it is important for the MPP, again, to relook at this whole issue and to learn lessons from it for the future. Right now, I think they have no choice but to learn to compromise. Learn to compromise means that in many issues, you don't allow the debate in the House to determine the matter. That means a lot of issues can actually be discussed behind the scenes. Policies can be agreed upon. Strategies can be agreed upon. The debate in the House, as I said, can be just an opportunity for people to air their views. But in the end, what has been agreed upon should be something which is agreed upon by the two political parties.
Enriching, some will argue that enriching debates are an important qualitative aspect of parliamentary democracy, which we have.
Absolutely.
And so the back channel conversations, the compromises, a lot of, quote and unquote, some will call it even underhand dealings, may have all contributed to Parliament's lameness. In fact, all the way from the days when you're a member of Parliament, Parliament has been criticized for just being an extension of the executive. Whatever the executive wants, essentially, Parliament just endorses. would you recommend? I mean, first of all, if you want to express your opinion, why you think that situation has been the case? Of all the organs of government, Parliament has been seen as this entity that apparently, quote unquote, doesn't have a mind of its own. It's an extension of the executive. Whatever government brings, it passes.
That actually, to tell you the truth.
How do we overcome this?
No, to tell you the truth, that has been can be traced back to this constitution that we are implementing, because in bringing up a Republican constitution, we had tried to marry Westminster and the American concept together. And I told those who were in the Constitutional Assembly, because that time I refused to participate in the Constitutional Assembly, I didn't go. So I pointed out to them that you are taking the wrong step and need to collapse the system, because the things were not meant to be like that. When the Americans use the term checks and balances, that's a good reason for that. It means that the executive kind of roughshod their position by imposing on the legislature. The legislature is there to be a check, not only to critique, but to suggest, to amend, to make alterations, and to reflect the people's will, as opposed to the president, who is only an individual elected. Okay, he and his vice are individuals elected, and elected to govern. That is also true, but elected to govern with the consent of the people. Now, the people are not in parliament. The people are only represented in parliament. And even again, I also critique even members of parliament to appreciate that if there's an issue, you are supposed to open your ears. You are supposed to talk to as many people as possible and get their views. I remember as being a member of parliament, normally issues that are coming to the house, people will stop me even in the street and make suggestions to me and say, what about this situation? Look at this, or this has happened, and so on and so forth. So you find out that if I'm standing on the platform, on the podium in parliament, I am speaking not merely because of whatever shoots into my head, but I'm speaking because I have gathered information from others that can help me. I'll give you an example. At one time, I remember I was telling them about how long it takes by bus to go from Ashimota to Accra. And then I was telling them about the price of certain commodities at Makola. And somebody had the cheek to say, but you didn't take the bus. So how did you know? And I laughed. I said, you are childish. I don't have to take the bus. I allow people to take the bus and they come back and give me the results. So what I'm talking about is authentic. I know the price at Makola, not because I'm going to Makola to be asking people for prices, but I send people to Makola to go and find out what the prices are. So I'm talking on authority.
Market sampling.
Market survey. That is exactly the job I'm supposed to do. So you can see the approach to politics that I'm trying to describe, and say that it's not a question of just somebody standing and then saying whatever comes into his head. It has to be based upon data, and that data is available if you look for it. And so the presidency is meant to be assisted. I think this is the checks and the balances they are talking about. It means the president is to be assisted by parliament as an independent institution. But of course, the mistake we made was that we made ministers, members of parliament, as ministers. We're not doing ministers and deputy ministers. So the question is that whatever they are going to talk about in their cabinet meeting, is that going to be different from whatever is going to happen here on the floor of parliament? I think this is the error. And we will need to revisit this. This constitutional review must be pursued now. I know it was done, we spent a lot of money on it, and then we shelved it. But I think it should be brought back now, discussed, debated, and implemented. And we make sure that parliament is made, no minister should hold a parliamentary position. And that no MP should even be a chairman or member of any board. It's a complete contradiction. They are supposed to be there to check these very people.
Why has it stalled, in your opinion? I mean, the NDC started a process, and the NPP took over government, and not much progress has been made, apparently. Well, there appear to be some bipartisan consensus on some key aspects of the Constitution that ought to change. What, in your opinion, is the reason that accounts for the lack of action?
Well, I have been paused because I've been asking this question all along. I asked myself, I said, number one, Mahama made a mistake by producing a white paper, which, as a constitutional provision, you don't make white paper on it. Because white paper is your view. It's not your view we want. The reason why we make a commission was to be able to solicit the views of Ghanaians. So I think the MPP government also made the error of shelving it and not doing anything about it. And I think it is time now that we bring that issue back on the floor.
What the scenes in Parliament recently, troubling scenes. We saw members of Parliament literally throwing blows, or exchanging blows, and looked pretty much troubling, so to speak. In short, with the seemingly evenly distributed numbers in Parliament, plus or minus one party having more than the other, are you confident? That the 8th Parliament of the Fourth Republic would be a better parliament than others? Are you confident?
No, I am not. Unless the leadership play their proper role as leaders. Because the leaders should be able to call the members to order. I'm aware there are a lot of young rabble-rousers in the House who think that their job is to make as much noise as possible. I think they should call them to order. I remember that in Wake we used to actually decide who is to speak on what, and even provide those you call backbenchers. We provide the backbenchers with data and information upon which they can actually make meaningful contribution on the floor of the House. So I think with this kind of situation, there's a danger to both parties, because sometimes I think people think that, okay, if you can frustrate Akufo-Addo in the next 4 years, he doesn't do anything, then we'll win. And I say it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like that. The same as you were saying earlier on, to say that people said the parliament didn't do anything. And there's the reason why this did not happen, That can happen.
Right.
So it is in the interest of the members of the House, but it's the responsibility of the leaders to be able to do constant survey. In fact, if you don't feel like the law of retreat in any case, so they should be doing more retreat for the members, to appraise them, to educate them, to sensitize them on the issues and how they can be able to handle themselves. And as I said, where the bus stops is the national interest. What are we doing in the national interest on this particular issue that is coming before the House?
You lamented some losses in the recent elections.
Yes.
And naturally so. I mean, knowing you back in the days in the early 90s, such a stalwart for the party. But speaking from the standpoint of a statesman, are you worried about the concept of winner takes all, which has been characteristic of the two parties whenever they're in government? The NDC is in government, is winner takes all. The MPP is in government, winner takes all. First of all, are you worried about this? And if you are, what recommendations?
It has been a debate going on all the time, and I realize where the problem is coming from, because again, it's coming back from the same issue we are raising to say that if you have an executive president where he like ours, it's like he's appointed every member of every committee, of every board, every institution. And that is where the whole danger is coming from. Just last night I was reflecting, and I was telling myself that if I were in the position of the president, perhaps what I would do is I would ask Bagby now, and I said, okay, Bagby, find for me NDC member, let's say about 100 or so members whom you think have capabilities, abilities, and the rest of them to serve on certain institutions. And you can even suggest the institutions that you think they can be able to serve upon. This is just the reflection that came to my mind. And I say, if you do that, you can actually disarm some of the opposition that eventually they would like to throw at you. It will also end this question about winner takes all. Because my view is that if we are trying to find capable individuals to man many institutions in the country, the talents are available. I interact with people from all sides. And I can assure you that the majority of them do not even belong to political parties. They are around. But
you find out that when something happens, somebody will say, oh, but he doesn't belong to our party, therefore don't appoint you. And I say, what has belonging to your party got to do with the issue? The question is that person capable of doing what we think should be done in this particular
Is it
issue?
not because members of political parties see their membership and contribution as an investment,
Well,
which is worthy of reward, and therefore you don't give it to anybody who hasn't invested?
Well, this is the allegation, but sometimes those who are talking about the investment, sometimes don't even invest anything. They sometimes don't even invest anything, because
They feel entitled.
Exactly, because look at this. You find the big business people who make huge contribution to political parties. I often tell them myself, don't fool yourself and think that he's your party member. He's not. Because he's contributing to the other side as well. He's playing a game because it does not matter who wins. He will be able to get his contract, you get his. So understand that point of view. So in that case, it does not matter, so far as I am concerned, that just ensure that the person is a Ghanaian. He's entitled to participate in the process of making the progress in the country. So let's take somebody who has so much talent in manufacturing something particular product. Now, if you encourage him to take a loan from the bank, you are not saying give him money. It's just a question of encouragement. And he builds a factory. Does he not employ people, a lot of people?
Right.
Doesn't that take away the unemployment level? So how do you lose? If we now count the number of people who are employed, who takes the credit?
So as a party elder, would you recommend to our president, Nanado, to consider appointing, extending appointments beyond the party?
What I'm telling you, I just told you that just last night. I was sleeping in this. Normally when I'm sleeping,
you do these reflections.
Quite unlike people who fall asleep and go like that. My brain is always working. Sometimes I even get scared.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely I will make this suggestion to him. But of course, it's for him to take it or to leave it. But I think it's important.
Correct. But now going a bit on a historical excursion, you were one of the leaders of your party in the early 90s when we started the democratic experiments. I am sure that you're one of those who recommended to your party to boycott, was it the parliamentary elections?
Absolutely.
And he did boycott the parliamentary
That was the worst blunder of my life.
And indeed, okay, so you have just given the answer. Very interesting. So you've taken the wind out of my sail.
Oh yes, it was one of the worst blunders I have ever committed.
Is your refusal to go to the consultative assembly also considered the worst blunder?
Yeah, well, that one, it was not me personally. It was the bar.
That was the bar.
It was the bar itself that.
Do you consider that equally?
That also was a blunder because
Okay.
I told them, I said, look, okay, you were saying they are putting hairdressers, they were putting butchers as professional. Right. And I said, you boycott, but if you were there, you would have influenced the situation because I remember in '68, I was representing the Ghana National Youth Council, the Council Assembly. Now, I made a lot of contribution in that house to the process of forging out the Constitution. I even remember having the voting age reduced from 21 to 18. And later on, in my absence, they reversed that decision. And when I queried the speaker, they said, are you a young man? You want to be president? So I said, I'm 30-something. Right. Why will I be president? If I'm president for, let's say, 4 years or even 5 years, after that, what do I do? My whole life is destroyed.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the important issue now is for us to appreciate that we've made errors.
Engagement is the key thing.
We need to engage one another, and not in a hostile attitude, because right now I just see hostility at every level. As soon as something is raised, because it's from the other side, they pounce on it, and then there is fight. And I said, no, it need not be like that. As the people say, they say, Jojo is better than what? War. And just to appreciate that I have ideas. Sometimes I have strong views on issues, but I tell people that I still put a question mark. And I said, okay, Kofi, what do you think about this? I may not even tell you what my views are, but I will just ask you, I say, what are your views about it?
Right.
Then you express your views. Then I said, okay, have you looked at it this way? I'm not saying that you are wrong, and I'm not saying that the way I'm looking at it is even right, but I'm just asking whether you also can look at it from this point of view. And you find out that through this dialogue and discourse, we may find out, as I often say, I said, that this person was right and I was wrong, or that I was right and he was wrong, or that we were even both wrong. Because during the discourse, we find out the middle course, and I appreciate that we were all looking at it from a different angle, and yet the issue was there. So we can come to a compromise. And I think this, to me, is what politics should be. It should be building consensus.
Right. And I'm asking this partly because even though it's a long time in history, apparently, from the standpoint of our constitutional evolution, the NDC just boycotted the recent inauguration of the president. And it does seem that political boycott as a tool...
Actually, they did not. They were there. And the NDC was... That was what we heard. But the NDC was there. I was there.
That's the report I got.
No, it's not true. They were there.
Okay.
All the MPs were there.
Okay, so that's refreshing to know. Yes. So clearly, it's hopefully it's behind us. But it does seem that political boycott over the years has been such a powerful tool used by both parties.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily.
Whenever you're frustrated with the process, you just boycott.
Yeah, it doesn't. Sometimes you can find out at the end of it, you find out that you are the losers. Because just imagine that first parliament that we boycotted, when Bahene lost the election, we say stolen verdict. Because of that, we did not put candidates to go to parliament. So we actually had a one-party state for 4 years. Now, just imagine the contribution that would have been made by our members in the House to a lot of the issues that had arisen. But some of the mess in which we are in now would not have been in.
So as a political party, this is remorseful. This is something you have regretted as a party?
I've said that many times to all friends and people. I always tell them, I said that those were errors we had made, and we should learn lessons from that. That it's better to engage rather than to say that, all right, if you want to do, go ahead. I'm not going to part of it. That is an error.
Do you think that as a democratic experiment, we are making progress? Are we growing or are we stagnating? I mean, from your experience of the early 90s all the way to early 2000s, all the way to now, do you get the sense that we are growing, we're maturing, or we're repeating too many of the past mistakes that makes you wonder if we're actually going in a secular fashion?
Well, I will confess that perhaps we had not really progressed because some of the issues that you and I are talking about right now, some should not have been occurring. That fight, for example, in Parliament, well, I've never seen it before. Actually, I see it in other countries.
Right.
Happening.
Asia and other
countries. And
yes.
One of my standing jokes is that Ghanaians have become copycats. That whatever happened elsewhere, we think it's normal. And we don't sit down to reflect and appreciate that Ghana is supposed to be the standard space setter for the rest of the continent. And indeed, oftentimes I even tell my white friends that we are way ahead of them in many, many, many areas of human thought and endeavor and so on and so forth. So we don't go repeating those blunders that happen. So we have not made the progress that we ought to make. Because as I said, we were the very first country south of the Sahara to become independent. Our leader chose the Black Star. And I have had argument with my Crifet friends who say that black is darkness. And I laughed and I asked them a question. I said, what is the color of the moon? Of course, they see the light there.
Right.
And I said, but because you don't study geology, if you have, you begin to appreciate that the moon is black.
Interesting.
But the moon is only show the reflected light of the sun.
Right.
That's what gives it the light.
Okay.
So the choosing of the Black Star was that we are black race, but we are supposed to reflect God's glory. And that is why it was chosen.
Some cosmic spiritual education.
No, yeah, whatever you want to put it, whatever you want to put it, but that is my view. And I said that we are supposed to be the pace setters for the rest of the continent and the black race all around the globe. Because if you remember at the time of independence, the black leaders from America, they all came to Ghana to celebrate with us. To them, it was an emancipation of the blacks, which, compelled them to agitate for their own equal rights in America, which, of course, has now culminated in Barack Obama, person of African descent, becoming what? President of America. That is actually what it is meant to be.
Corruption has been a major subject in Ghana for some time. It came to a head in 2016, and in the view of many commentators, corruption defined the 2016 elections.
It's true.
It appeared to have also played some role in terms of public perception and the commentary, etc., in the just ended elections. How do we overcome this quagmire of corruption in our governance? The president has stated position on it time and again. I remember a famous statement he made at the beginning of his tenure that if you are coming to government to make money, you better think again. So there has been a demonstration of leadership commitment or leadership statement of intent. The Office of the Special Prosecutor was established, and then his rather dramatic resignation also put things in further perspective, among others. So how do we overcome this challenge of corruption as we start a new administration?
Well, to tell you the truth, it's a worrying matter, and it's given some of us sleepless nights and worry over the years, because we see people who flaunt so much wealth around, and you don't visibly know what they are doing to earn that kind of money. When we were coming a few minutes back, my driver and I, we passed an area, we saw these huge buses and cars and the rest, all for sale. Then I said, where did they get the money to go and bring all these vehicles in? And surprisingly, my driver says, it's all money laundering. And I actually remembered, I'm not sure which of the ministers, I think I told one of them, and I said, your foreign exchange is not stable, because anytime the Bank of Ghana releases the dollar to the market, there are these people who already have made arrangement with the forex bureaus. And so they take virtually all the money. And they manage to take it out of the country.
Exerting more pressure.
Exactly. And pressure on the money. And all this is just part of the corruption that we are talking about. Because when they talk about corruption, it's not just a question of someone inflating a contract and making money out of it. It's much more than that. And I have seen virtually that it permeates every level of our society. Because even the janitor, he also wants money from you in order to open the door for you. And there was one episode I remember very well, which unfortunately goes all the way back to 69, 70. And this was my good friend, Apia Minka, who was then the Deputy Minister for Trade. And what happened was that time there was import license. So it looks like the receptionist and the rest there will take money from someone and put the import license application and add it to the list, the official list that was on his table. So, of course, he signed without knowing where they all came from. And in the end, what happened? There were more import licenses issued than there was money to support it. And so the government was compelled to cancel all the import licenses. And I remember people at that time, then they removed him and put him in Minister of Justice. And I remember people were saying that, he's very corrupt. This is what happened. I was saying that because you don't understand what's going on. That's the reason why you are accusing me. I am not supporting because he's my friend, even though we are different parts of the political divide. But since he's my friend, but I say, because I know what was going on. So I was telling them that even those officials on the lower level were collecting money and even doing things which is tarnishing the image of the minister. So I'm just using this as an example, as an illustration, just to show you that the corruption is permeating every part of us. The policeman on the road is doing it. The road toll collector is doing it. At every level, you find the same thing. I think that this thing requires much more than even just the prosecutor, because the prosecutor is only going to be prosecuting the big guns,
the gun corruption.
But it does not change what is happening from all the way down. I think the NCCE should be empowered, should be resourced to be able to set up programs for education. And we should take this even from the school, from the kindergarten, if you like to put that, from kindergarten all the way up. Tell everyone that if you go and someone is doing something which is not the decent process to undertake, it's your money he's stealing. It's your money he's stealing. And therefore, stop it and tell him that I cannot give it to you because you are not entitled to it. You know the reason why people are against digitization? Because it prevents them from collecting money.
By removing the interface.
Exactly. And so I have maintained that Ghanaians love chaos. They love chaos because they benefit from the chaos.
Benefit from chaos.
Exactly. That is why they like chaos. They would like things not to go away, go and come. Something which is meant to be done in 1 week, they will say go and come. And the next 1 month, nothing happens.
Just to put that in perspective, Senior, Niccolo Machiavelli said, every reformer has an enemy in whoever stands to benefit from the reform.
Absolutely.
Or rather, whoever stands to lose from
To lose, yes.
He has an enemy in whoever stands to lose
Exactly.
from the reform.
So I think one of the issues, again, I would like to take up with the president is going to be this question. I say, look, the NCC is a beautiful institution, but if you don't resource it, they cannot do their work. I even tell the NCC also, I remember taking charge with one of the previous chairs. When I told him, I said, you are an institution meant to coordinate and put a program in place. You are not necessarily implementers, because yours is to say that, okay, we have a debate or discourse on this issue, let's say in Tamale. Then I say, you are a lawyer. All you have to do was to go and ask the Bar Association and say, okay, these are the programs we have around the country. So give us members from your regions and the rest of them to participate in that discourse. And we can do this in the case of medicine, architecture, planning, sanitation. The experts are there, the institutions are there. And when we do this, the experts will come to those institutions and enlighten the public. And the more the public is enlightened on issues, the less corruption we have.
Limiting ourselves, though, to ground corruption, which normally takes place especially at the political level, or that's what the perception says. What do you think about strengthening and further making effective the laws on asset declaration? Because over the years, it appears that's one area we seem to have, to put it bluntly, joked with.
We made a mockery of it. We have made a complete mockery of it. Asset declaration should not be a document that you write and give to somebody to go and put in a safe. No. It's a complete mockery. The assets should be declared and the assets should be made public so that the public now become the monitor. They will monitor it and they will say, this is what this man had declared. Now I have seen that he's built this house. I've seen him riding in these luxury cars. He has got this for his girlfriend. I think that's corruption here. Investigate it. And even if he puts it in the name of his son, we'll find out what work the son is doing. Indeed, I can tell you something. We can even use the income tax as a useful tool.
Starting points.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this was Safo when he was minister for, it's either him or the one who followed him, the one who died. bad way to do. It could be bad way to do. And I remember telling him, I said, you are scratching your head because your budget is not balancing. And I said, but I don't know where the money is. And he laughed. Then I said, you go to East Legon, go and see all those huge houses which sprang or sometimes built in 2 years or 3 years. And I said, this is simple. In other several countries, what you do is that you send valuers. They don't need to go and make any measurement. They look at the structure and they give you what they think is value. Necessarily bring it to an end. But it will ameliorate and decrease to such an extent that people will not find it worthwhile any longer to do the dishonesty.
Right. But I guess politicians probably listening to us somewhere by now will say, look, it's all too easy to discuss these things in theory, armchair conversation, but they'll probably criticize us for saying we haven't addressed the most, or rather, since the NPP is an elephant, maybe the conventional saying is the elephant in the room, the big one. The big issue being the fact that you haven't addressed the campaign financing problem. I.e., political parties are supposed to look for money to do business. They just finished campaigning. They spent so much millions all over the place. How do we expect these parties to finance themselves if these parties don't allow their functionaries to also then make some money for the next election? Because otherwise, we have 4 years from now, and they have to mount a campaign agenda, and we have strangled them, and they have no money from any other source, yet the state is not paying a dime for them. So I guess from a more practical angle, what would you have to say?
No, I've heard this before. Some say that the state should to
finance political
party. And I said, it's an impossibility because, how much is the money that they're going to give to each candidate? And in any case, you find out that some will collect the money and they will not even go and campaign. It's a way of making money. If you recollect, there was a certain period where party owners were being given cars. And you find out that many of them will not do anything. They will only go and collect the car, and then they will not do any campaign. They'll go some 100 or 200 votes or something like that, and then they'll go and sleep. And then another period, they will wake up again when there's an election. So this is, I think, the suggestion I was making about party membership and party dues. That will help because if you recollect what Obama did, where people were just contributing small amounts of money to him on the net. And he was actually collecting more money than those who are getting huge sums from the corporations. And I was trying to say that the ownership of the party is the individual shareholder, the individual member. That if he is doing that and you say it's even 5 cedis a month that he contributes, you add it up and then you begin now to see how much it is. It's a huge sum of money, which can actually help the legitimate candidates sponsored by the party to participate in it.
It's virtually 6 o'clock p.m., and I would like to remind our listeners that you are still on Asase Radio. You're listening to Town Hall Talk. And my most distinguished, senior-most friend, statesman of our country, and a stalwart of the NPP, Mr. Sam Okudzeto. I dared call it Samuel, but I don't know what the Sam is, but I suspect it's Samuel.
I stopped that long ago. My nephew is also called Samuel. My son is also called Samuel.
I realized that. So forgive me, I dared extend it, but I realized Sam may mean Sam.
That's right.
Not Samuel.
It is Sam.
Yes, Mr. Sam Okudzeto, who is well known and needs very little introduction. Mm-hmm. At this stage, I'm going to ask you about the election petition, which is pending before the Supreme Court. Electoral disputes, and it's not just the election petition. For instance, we had the Supreme Court actually vacate an injunction that was granted against the MP for the Hohoi constituency, and then around the same time you had a court in Cape Coast imposing an injunction against the MP for Asin North, if I'm right. And some people have interpreted contradictions in the various positions. But be that as it may, electoral disputes and how the courts are intervening in the process, is it something that you find satisfactory in terms of our stability as a democracy?
Well, I can plead guilty in some respect about this issue because I remember the the Akufo-Addo and Mahama dispute that dragged on for about 8 months or so in the court. And I was so distressed about that issue, and I raised a lot of objections to the way the court handled the matter. And the Supreme Court actually had organized a retreat where they went and discussed these issues. And I was the non-judge that they invited to participate with them on that matter. And I tried to point out that election disputes, they are bound to come as a legal matter. But if you don't let a proper machinery to quickly deal with it, it can escalate into something. In fact, I think there was one before where the person actually finished serving his term before pronouncement was made up. Exactly. That shouldn't be the case. And so the disputes are likely to come. But people should not be confusing the Hokwe and the Cape Coast, because the Hokwe one was more of a constitutional issue rather than an election dispute, because in the referenda that took place, the northern portion of that area was declared to be part of the Oti region. This was the request by the people themselves. Now, being Oti region, it means that it was no longer part of the Volta region. Hokwe is part of the Volta region. And therefore, you cannot have a constituency which strives to this. And the Supreme Court actually made a pronouncement on this before. That's why I was surprised that this matter should go to, somebody should go to Ho and file a petition against Amawu. If the people are talking about human rights violation, which was, I think, the new found slogan now for lawyers, everything that happens, instead of talking about the law and affecting the issue, they use a high funding when I say people with human rights were violated. I remember somebody was asking me, say, but why those people were not allowed to vote? And I say, yes, if they were not allowed to vote, that has nothing to do with Amahu or the constituency that he was in. Because if they were not allowed to vote, they were supposed to be under Buem. That should have been the attack, is to say that we should have been part of the Buem electoral area. We were not allowed to participate in the election, and therefore go and rehold an election for Buem. And that will, of course, affect the NDC. And because of that, that's why they jumped to go and use the whole court as an excuse for that purpose. So let's put it this way. Electoral dispute, there's nothing you can do about it. They are bound to come. The question, of course, is that we need well-trained judges on the issue. Because I can tell you that many of the lawyers don't even do their research properly. They just assume, as I said, they'll go to court and say somebody's human rights is violated. The issue is not just human rights. If there are specific laws dealing with the issue, then you don't go and start talking about human rights. Talk about the specific legal issue, which is at stake. And I think the courts have been reasonably synthesized, because the whole seminars were held by the Chief Justice.
But is the right to vote not a human rights issue?
I know it's a human rights issue. The question, what I'm saying is that if I did not vote, does my human rights affected? Is that the reason why I should say that the MP who is elected by the majority of the people should not be in parliament? I don't think so. I think that's a confusing issue.
Right, correct.
I think that is confusing.
And I suspect I think that's the Supreme Court's approach in this particular regard, that the character of the claim.
The claim, that's right.
Whether it's a human rights issue or it's a petition.
Petition, that's right.
One should be looked into very carefully.
That's correct.
It's interesting. Okay. I am going to now take you to an interesting area, the Rawlings factor. We lost Jerry Rawlings in 2020.
Yeah.
And I think he's still not buried.
Yeah, not yet.
And you have been one of the hard-hitting critics of Jerry Rawlings in the 90s. I remember watching you a lot on Talking Points and other television conversations where you were very critical of the legacy of Jerry Rawlings, both PNDC and in the Fourth Republic. Now he's demised, and Africans have a way of converting things once death happens. Have your perspectives of Jerry Rawlings changed? Have you evolved, or are you still very much unhappy with the legacies, to put it mildly, unhappy with the legacy of Jerry Rawlings. How would you remember him, in short? How do you remember him?
Well, let's put it this way. People have seen me in public, and I go there, shake hands with him, and they look at me and they're taken aback. Then they say, has he apologized to you? Then I look at them and I said, I don't need an apology from anybody. I said, you don't seem to understand. I am a Christian. And that's one thing, all of us, we recite the Lord's Prayer. And we say, forgive us our trespasses as we have forgiven. I said, do you understand that thing? So read it slowly. Then you begin to see that it is both a curse and also a blessing. Because what you are saying is that, God, because I have not forgiven, you also don't forgive me. That's the meaning of it.
A conditional request.
Exactly. So I said, if you read John 14, you will see the emphasis that Jesus was talking about, love. And then, in fact, when you read where the Lord's Prayer itself is, you will see that in verse 14, it says, if you forgive, I will forgive you. Then 15 says, if you do not forgive, I will not forgive you. This is God. If you do not forgive, you will not forgive. So, in 85, when he put me for the second time in detention, I was at the BNI. And if you read my book, you'll see it there. Where I said that at the midnight, I was reading the Bible, and I just had something like a vision, whereby my own Miss Krantz and the rest on there were all played to me. That time, of course, we don't have this video as you have now. So we used to talk about kaleidoscope, where you have pictures.
Standard pictures.
Standard pictures all coming to you.
Right.
And from that day onwards, I started praying for Rawlings.
85.
85.
Even before
September.
the Fourth Republic.
Oh, yes. September. Indeed. It was the night of the 4th of September, which was my 55th birthday.
You just got people calculating your birthday backwards.
Yeah, no, in fact, I was supposed to.
Say what you just said,
work.
Yeah.
They can calculate. If they don't know what I did, I'm 85. They don't know I've been around.
Congratulations, you have been around indeed.
Thank you.
Congratulations, yes.
So,
great.
You asked me a question about Rawlings factor. Yes, I forgave him. That I said, just like Jesus said, Father, forgive them because they don't know what they are doing. He didn't know what he was doing. He was a young man, vibrant, full of knowledge and idea. Others around him captured it into it or played into it. And they committed atrocities upon atrocities. Indeed, if you see my book, you will see the list of the killings that was done throughout the whole country, region to region. But unless we forgive, we also cannot be forgiven. So I think that we forgave him. And the fact that he died at the time he died, none of us had any control over it. Indeed, I was at the mother's funeral where I greeted him. That was barely, I think, 2 or 3 weeks before he himself died.
So at the personal level, you have forgiven him.
Oh, yes.
But at the principled level,
yes.
What do you make of his legacy? As someone who staged 2 coup d'etats, as someone who presided over one of the longest both military and civilian regimes in Ghana, and as someone who is indeed the father, so to speak, of the Fourth Republic. How do you remember him?
Well, let's put it this way. I remember him because I cannot help but associate the atrocities that I myself have seen, which were done under his regime. He didn't take a gun and start shooting people, but it was under his regime. There are a lot of young men now who are actually in politics, who were part of those things, and who were at that time shouting about corruption and the rest of them. And now I see where they are, and I can pinpoint them and tell them that you are just as corrupt as the people you had killed. So it's not just him. It is just a whole host of people who together
Correct.
that brought about this kind of thing that happened in our country. And so we all need repentance in this for the going forward. That is the reason why I was saying that I had forgiven him.
Right.
And I forgiven all those who were around him who were intolerant to any kind of criticism. In fact, we were called enemies of the revolution. That was the title given to some of us. Enemies of the revolution. There were even placards that said Awuku Okudzeto at that time.
But in retrospect, would you say that there were some justifications, at least, for the 1981 coup? Both 79 and 81. There were some justifications. I mean, even if overall you probably had issues, but
let's just be careful.
The circumstances of the time at the time.
No, let's just be careful. The revolution of both 79 and 81, one can argue about that. Because let me tell you something. 79, the electoral process was on. The ban on politics was removed when Akufo took over from Achampong. Achampong was arrested. And they had put the machinery in place. We were all campaigning when that coup happened. And then, of course, they collected those leaders and went and shot them without any trial. I kept asking those young people who were around making all the noise, and I said, show me the transcript of the trial. Which witnesses did you call? What is the proof? In fact, what is the wealth that those people have accumulated which you seize? Let's see it. And nobody can be able to produce that. So that's it. As for the 81 one, I can tell you that what corruption did Lehman commit? That was the simplest human being that I have known.
Apparently, he couldn't organize a government. His budgets constantly rejected.
Yes,
the government was lame,
Yet
and the country was in need
because
of leadership.
Because the CPP, of which he is supposed to be the leader, undermined him.
Well, that's his own internal political problem.
Yes, well, I know. They undermine him, but that is not the reason for a coup. That's not the reason for a coup. The CPP itself organized to undermine him. Again, because of, I would call it tribalism. It's like, where did this northerner come from? And here, when I was looking at the Akufo-Addo Constitutional Commission, I found out that Hilary Lema was actually a member.
Interesting indeed.
So he was not a nobody as they think he is. I remember I've been chairman of the Ghana Togo Border Demarcation Commission, appointed by Achampong, that when we used to go to Lomé, he was actually one of the senior officials at the embassy in Togo. So he was not a nobody. So I would say that there's no justification for any of those coups. None whatsoever.
Especially 81. For
Exactly.
79, you said maybe the context.
Yeah, this was an elected government. The elected government which was in office. And if he's defeated, if budget was defeated, they brought another one.
But the fact that he fathered the Fourth Republic, which obviously has stood the test of time, regardless of all its problems, it's the longest of a regime that Ghanaians have ever known. Is that a testament to his eternal legacy?
Well, let's put it this way. I always tell people that don't just condemn an individual because he may have some good part or have done something good and give him credit for it. So the fact that he agreed eventually for constitutional governance, that goes to his credit. The fact that he became the very first president of the Fourth Republic, that goes to, it's history. There's nothing you can do about it. It's part of history. And he served 2 terms, in addition to the previous military dictatorship regime that he had. Exactly. But at least during the period when the Constitution came into force, in fact, I even used to boast to people, I say that they came and collected me from my house and locked me up. Now, dare you. Now you dare me, come to me and tell me that somebody at the police station wants me. I will tell you to go to hell. Who do you think you are? I have human rights.
And before his demise, he appeared to represent something of a unifying factor, having become very close to Nana Danko as a president.
That was
the optics and the beautiful symbolism all that presented. I mean, in terms of...
In fact, that is what I thought of was the beauty of it. That if, in spite of everything else, I remember Nana Addo and they had to run into exile before, and yet he became close to him. And that if you saw you see him at the mother's funeral with Nana Addo, the president, and it was so beautiful to watch. And so, no matter how we view him, I think the important thing is to appreciate that he had left a legacy.
I'm running out of time, and I'd also like to remind our listeners that you're on Town Hall Talk. The program is sponsored by the Magdan Shipping Company Limited, your total logistics partner. And I have the distinguished Mrs. Awuku Okudzeto on the program. I'm at this stage going to ask you questions about the bar.
Okay.
You led the bar for years, and you were instrumental. I mean, Ghana Bar Association's history can never be written without you. Are you happy and satisfied with the state of the bar today?
Well, I've been questioned about this many times. People come and say, now we don't hear about the bar. What's going on? And I tell them that, well, you see, at the periods when human rights violations were occurring, the bar had no choice. Indeed, I remember the slogan I used to do at that time was to say that we are the voice of the voiceless, that the ordinary citizen cannot speak for himself. We, as lawyers, are supposed to represent them. And even right now, I would just like to remind the lawyer, because the number has increased, and there is so many young people now who think that the bar is a place to go and make money. So we have forgotten our real role in society. As a teacher, which you were, and I normally tell my students, I said, you know, all this universe.
I still am, though.
I know you are still. I know you are still teaching.
I still am.
I know you are still teaching.
Right.
So I say, in this whole universe, God chose you to be a lawyer. There must be a purpose for that. And say, what is that purpose? And I say, you are God's instrument for justice. Forget about the money aspect. And I said, the money is a bonus. And bonus in the context, not the way the Ghanaians understand bonus. Because Ghanaians understand bonus as a right. Because I'm working at the end of the year, you must give me a bonus. That means it's a right, but that's not the meaning of the word bonus. Bonus is a discretionary.
So you think the bar has become overly commercialized?
Yes, completely.
But in a capitalist economy, in a free market economy, how do we address that? People become professionals partly also to fulfill a pecuniary need. How do we balance the need to make money as a professional? And by the way, there's high societal expectation. You're from the village, you become a lawyer, you probably are the only one who ever became a lawyer from the village. The whole village is looking up to you. How do you deal with the expectations of society, a professional who has become a lawyer, and the ethics, which obviously you are speaking about, the importance of justice and others? Well,
it's a balance, you might say. You know, I often attend the American Bar Association annual conference. And the most prestigious trophy awarded is what they call pro bono. Either to an individual or an individual in his law firm showed the amount of pro bono that you have done. Now I see here in Ghana, people are using that word, misconstruing that word, because I've seen lawyers who come and say, I'm a pro bono lawyer. And then when you check on it, there's a complaint against that lawyer because he collected the person's money and had used the money. And yet he had pretended to tell people that he was a pro bono lawyer. So I said, that's dishonesty. You don't do that. Yeah. If you say pro bono, it means what? It is free. I'm not talking about the expenses and the rest. That you can let the person pay, or if you collect the money belonging to him, you can take those expenses out of it. But fee is out of the question. And sometimes you also forget that. I say my advertisers are the people I help for nothing. Because they are the same one who will tell people, oh, he's a very good lawyer. If you have this problem, please go to him. So I lose here and I gain at the other end of it. So I'm not saying that people should not make money. I mean, you're doing a commercial matter, obviously, there's money involved in it. money is going to come to the client through you. You understand? You're entitled to your fees. You take it. But sometimes they take the fee and even take a huge chunk of the client's money. Now you give a bad reputation to the lawyer because you are aware that the gown we wear, that you know the history at the back of it, there's a pocket there. In the old days, lawyers are particularly the barrister, is too decent the person to handle money.
Put it behind
the
him.
guinea is put in it back. So
well, today the money is too big to fit in. So that's the problem of the pocket. It's too
yes,
small.
so I would just
Right.
make a plea to the lawyers and say that, look, the profession is not a place where you can go and say that you just want to make the maximum amount of money. The profession is it's a question of dignity. It's a question of respect. That if you handle your case well, you get a good reputation. Not you go and advertise yourself on Facebook. Because I've seen out some of the young lawyers, as soon as they are qualified, particularly the girls, they go and put their face wearing wig and gown on Facebook. They don't realize that they can be this bad for doing that because it's not allowed in our profession. And so I would just say that handle your matter well. The bonus I'm talking about, don't cancel him. You find out that somebody will come with a very serious matter and give it to you to handle for him. You do it, you charge the person. The person is happy that you've been able to handle the issue for him. That person again will tell someone and say, he's a very good lawyer. If you have this problem, please go to him or her. You may make money, or at least, the least, you will earn enough to live on.
Let me ask you my last question, perhaps the most controversial too. Because of its history, as essentially from the UGCC days, essentially fighting for independence, the bar appears to have been in the throes of politics from its inception, and especially more so in the 1980s, early 90s, and all that. Is the bar today politicized? Because that's a criticism some people have leveled against the bar in terms of, as an institution, focusing on its own development, the development of lawyers, professional training, as many bars in the world tend to focus on. Is our bar distracted by its history in terms of its role as a political entity, its pressure role as a political entity over the years?
No, if you say it's a pressure institution, yes, but to talk about political, that's not correct. I will correct you on that one. I think people misconstrue that the time we were fighting Rawlings and the rest of Champon and the rest of human rights violation, the rest of the people, like that. But you are, why? Why are you doing politics? And I asked them, I said, what's your concept of politics? Partisan politics, yes. But politics is a human life. There's nothing you do as if from your waking up to your sleeping, even when you are sleeping, you are still doing politics. Why? Because you're concerned about your safety. And you think that it's the police responsibility to do what? To make sure that the area is guarded so that you are safe. So I think it's a complete misconstruction or misunderstanding of the concept. What is happening now is the fact that because the organized bar is too big, there are a lot of people who have never even attended any bar meeting or conference. So they don't even know what the profession is doing. They cannot even have their voice heard on important issues where maybe there need to be intervention. There will be a situation where, for example, the bar can say, okay, this matter meeting, maybe we need a delegation to see the Attorney General or to see the President to discuss this particular issue with. And you give your audience. And this is the way we intervene. It's not even the shouting and the screaming in public. No. A lot of things actually are done behind the scenes if there's a proper organization. So, in fact, it applies not only to the bar, it applies to all the professions. They all can intervene. You talk about sanitation, there are engineers who can tell you about that. You talk about the road congestion, how people are driving 5 lanes instead of 2 lanes. All that, there are engineers in the roads who can actually intervene. Go to government and say, we don't think this is the right way to do. Let's do it this way. Or, as is happening in Europe and America now, you know that they have bicycle lanes now as standard. Right? No car can move there. So people can take their bicycle and ride to work and come back. Nobody is going to say that, look at that lawyer, he's so poor that he's riding a bicycle. Because the Prime Minister himself is riding a bicycle.
Right.
Exactly. So I think this, to me, is the way forward for us to appreciate that Bar as an organized organization, and in fact, all the professions should be able to intervene in national issues without involving themselves in partisan politics.
I said the other was the last question, but forgive me, just 1 minute. What is your hope for the Fourth Republic? Are you confident that the Fourth Republic will last? Are there fault lines in the Fourth Republic that frightens you about the possible collapse of the Fourth Republic in the light of the past experiences of other republics?
Well, I do not think so. I think both the two major parties, NDC and NPP, are very sensible individuals who are involved in it, who appreciate that if it collapses, we are all losers. There are no winners. And so we all have an interest to ensure that it survives. That's the reason why I was telling you that it's not a question of time. You can go to Parliament and say, okay, you block everything that Akufo-Addo did because we have a way to stifle him in Parliament. You understand? And therefore you think you succeed. You have not succeeded. You have damaged the country. And when you damage the country, who are the losers? It's not Akufo-Addo. No. It's not even NPP. It's all of us together. So my plea to the Ghanaians is that it's one country, one nation, one people, one destiny. We all have a role to play. Nobody is superior, either in knowledge or in acumen, in taking a decision. Let every concept, idea be put forward so that we can move forward. When the country is at peace, everybody prospers. I always cite Solomon period in the Jewish history, that when Solomon was king, they said silver was so common that nobody wants silver coin. They all want gold coin. What's his name? Wood, acacia wood was so common that nobody even wants to build with acacia wood. They want cedar. So it just shows you that when prosperity comes, it inures to all the citizens, for the benefit of all the citizens. And therefore, when there is peace in the country, all of us benefit. So let's all just try and put our heads together and move this nation forward. We are doing much better than many other countries, so even some in the West. And so we have natural resources that God has given to us. We didn't toil for it. The way we exploit them, the way we use them for the benefit of the people. This is my plea to them.
As we focus on the larger glory, let me thank you so very much, Mr. Sam Okudzeto, whose CV, as I indicated, I cannot read in terms of volume. So I would just summarize it by saying a distinguished, eminent personality of our time and of our country and a statesman. I would like to thank you very much for coming on Town Hall Talk. This has been Town Hall Talk on Asase Radio. The program is sponsored by the Magdan Shipping Company Limited, your total logistics partner. My name is Kofi Abuchi. Have a good evening.
Kofi, thank you.
You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. But you must try and try, try and try. You'll succeed at last.